Okay, welcome to the Digital Indigenous Beading Circles teaching on seed bead branch earrings. And this is hosted by First Nations House at Student Life at the University of Toronto. So what we're making tonight is obviously in the title, these seed bead branch earrings. My mother made me these earrings and I just adored them. I really like how she used the blue lined clear beads because it gives the impression that the branch is covered in ice. So I really enjoy using clear lined beads. And I have some copper lined clear beads that I made a pair out of. These ones just very recently, last week during a meeting. And I've also experimented with an organic non-pattern with a different type of branch that doesn't have the extra little forks on the side branches. They're just mostly singular except for the end. And I've also made a pair with flowers added to the end as per a suggestion from one of our members of the beading circle. And this pattern seems like it's a much larger earring, and that's not because it's a bigger pattern, it's because we've used larger beads here. So these are a size 10 bead, and these are either a 12 or 11 size seed bead. So it gives a much larger branch. If you mix the different sizes of seed beads, and I did for these end flowers, this is a size 11 for the white, and that worked out great for the flowers. But if you use a small alternate color for your side branches, you may find that the branches end up too tiny, and you may end up having to add more beads in order to make the branches longer so that it's proportional in the way that you want it for the branch. But what we're going to do today is just the exact pattern of the earrings that my mother made me, and it's a simple repetitive pattern, and once you get the hang of it, you can change it however you like or add flowers and whatnot. And I'm just going to point out some anatomy of these, so just so you understand what I'm referring to. So I'm going to refer to the core branch, which is this one right from here to here. And then side branches are these from the core branch out to the tip. So these are side branches. And I might even refer to the smaller one as the side branch when I'm talking about it. So when you lay these flat, you can generally get an idea of what's happening. But because of the pattern, it'll end up hanging much differently than just flat. And if it doesn't, you can move it around as well to alter the branches a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to put this aside and we're going to get started. So the first thing you need is to gather your supplies. So what we need for this is our beads, obviously. So I'm just going to be using these copper size 10 beads so that I can make the pair for the mate for this pair of earrings. You're going to need your beading thread, and with these earrings you can actually even use sewing thread. I would recommend a better quality sewing thread, not something you get from the dollar store, but a Gutermann thread or Coates thread or something good if you're going to use sewing thread. And that's because these don't take a lot of weight. You shouldn't be pulling on them and whatnot. It's not like a bracelet that can get caught on something, though this can get caught in your hair, so you'll probably want to put your hair up if you have long hair, or someone who gets their hair caught in earrings. So I have a beading thread, and I chose a beige because if the thread pops out, if you can see the thread at any point for whatever reason, pardon me, for instance, with this one, you know, these are about 25 years old, so the thread is stretching, and that happens with threads. And so you can see some of it coming through, which is a brown, so it doesn't really show. I chose this because if I chose white, it would really pop out. And if I chose black, it might end up being too dark, and then you can really see it. So it depends on whose hair is in the background as well. If you have dark hair, you won't see the dark thread. So I chose this thread. You will also need, which is just a nylon beading thread in a beige color. You need a beading needle that's appropriate for whatever size you're using. This is much smaller than it needs to be. But in certain areas where we go through back and forth along these stems, you get several layers of thread in there. So you need a thin needle and you need thin thread. As with everything, you need your scissors. And then to attach them as earrings, you need these fish hooks. So these are, earring hardware, but these are often referred to as hook earring hardware or fish hook earring hardware. There's another method, for this earring, like I said, I'm showing you exactly how my mom made them, but this has a loop. You can avoid the loop and just put your two threads through a bead tip. You thread it through the hole in there, which is difficult to see, but if you have one, you'll know. Thread it through there, tie the knot a few times so that's a big knot that won't go through the hole, and then you close that clamshell, and then you can latch that around whatever earring hook that you want. So that is a method that you can use, but we're not learning that one today, for this teaching. And to use these fish hooks, some people like to have pliers. These are just simple, tiny jewelry pliers. But I will say, with these fish hooks, they bend pretty easy. So I've often just used my fingernail like that and opened it. So you might not even need pliers. And then when you close it again, you know, it's not great for your nails, but that's what my nails are for as far as I'm concerned. Okay, so we have everything. And we also want our beading mat. I like to use a beading mat to make it easier to pick up the beads, to move my work around, and with these contrasting colors, I can see my beads a lot better. So, we're going to get started. Put the beads there. And you're going to need to have a length of thread about 1.5 to 2 meters. 1.5 should be enough if you're making these with smaller beads. It should be more than enough. And if you're not adding flowers. If you're adding flowers while you make it, you definitely want 2 meters. Or if you tangle a lot, you might have to end your thread and then start a new one during the earring making. So I'm going to cut off about just over a meter, just under 2 meters. I'm going to add some flowers while I make it, and some I will add after. And threading my needle. You don't want it, you're not going to actually double it, but you need to get some of the thread out of the way, so you can pull that down pretty far. And then as the 2 layers get in the way, you can move your needle down the thread further. Okay, so what we're going to start with, I'm going to lay out some copper beads here on the black so I can see them really well. I spread them out so that more or less you have a flat layer. And it's good to have the holes facing upwards so you can pick them up nice and easy when you're making your earrings or working on your loom or doing any seed bead work. It's really good to have them laid out. And I like to use this kind of leather or bead mat because they don't bounce around too much. It's easier to work with. So the first thing we start with is our anchor bead. I'm going to use it in turquoise blue because I just want it to stand out for this teaching. And you just pick up the bead. You're not tying a knot. This is to stop you from having to tie a knot, but also not to have your beads come off. So you have that on there loose. This is my tail end, my needle end. I'm going to come back through the same way I went in the first time so that I'm looping it over. It's almost like tying the bead onto the thread. And I like to have a good amount of thread at the end in case I want to work with it some way. In this situation, I used the end threads to figure out how to do a flower. And I did a few flowers, and then I added more after I ran out of thread, the end threads. So I have that on there. It just went through twice. Sometimes just went through that hole in the same direction twice. Sometimes I'll do it 3 times. But that's not usually a problem. This will slide up and down, so I can move that up and down here as much as I want, and it'll go back and forth. But I do want to leave a good amount at the end, but not too much. So, yeah, that's about, well, less than a foot anyways, that's for sure. Maybe 2/3 of a foot. Okay, so that's your anchor bead. And then what you're going to do is string on your core branch that also includes the loop at the top. So you're stringing on the beads from here and all the way including that loop. And for this pattern, we're going to do 37 beads for the core branch. So I have that done already, just to make it simpler and quicker. So I have those beads on there. And that's my core branch, 37 beads. Now, I'm going to add my first side branch, which is really the distal end branch, or the end of the branch. So since I'm using copper for the whole thing, I'm going to use 9 more of these beads. So in reality, it'll just be 46 of those copper beads. But some people like to have contrasting colored side branches. And if that's the case, this is the branch that you need to know that's been added. So in this situation, I just have it in a different color to show you. I would add the 37 beads in the copper for my core branch, and then start my side branch, or end branch in this case, with 9 of the other color. One of our members did, I believe, brown here, and then all the end branches were green to resemble cedar, and it looked beautiful, just lovely. So you have your 37 for your start, and now I'm going to add the start of my first side branch. Another option I just want to point out about thread before we move on any further. If you choose beads that are just clear and then choose whatever thread color you want, that can be the under branch. So in this case I chose black thread, and when it goes through twice, it comes through dark enough. And so this is just an organic branch that I've been starting just to figure out a new pattern for something that I want to do. But you can see it comes through there, and so you don't even need to have the lined beads. It depends on what color of your thread. But that's only if you want it to look ice-coated. You probably wouldn't want ice-coated branches with flowers, because that might look a little silly because the flowers obviously would die then. Although I know it's just beads. So thread and bead choice can affect the look in those different ways as well. And you may want to add just clear beads to your side branches, so it looks like only the side branches are covered in ice, or just looking different in general. But we're just going to continue on with the copper so we can make one that matches the other one. I'm going to add 9 beads here. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, yep, I have the 9 there. And now what you're going to do, I'm just going to move that mat over because I would rather work on this surface. That's just good for holding the beads in place. So now what you're going to do is slide that last bead you added down. And you're going to ignore it for a second. And then you're going to come up through 5 beads on this side branch or end branch that you just added. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And try not to go through the thread. So that's why I kind of like to lay it flat if I can. I have the thread towards the bottom, and I just catch the top of the hole in each bead. So it's free flowing and not through the thread. So now I'm pulling that through. If you pull too hard, that will move off. So that's why I like to leave a good amount at the end as well, so that if I'm not paying attention and I pull this too taut, I didn't make my beads come off. So I've pulled that taut. It will loosen up as you work, but then I'll tighten up again as you tighten it. So this is the end part. So this is the last 6 beads there. So this very last bead is now perpendicular, and it stops the thread from unthreading when you go back in the same direction. So that's your stopper bead there, and you'll use that for other bead endings, such as with fringe earrings. So now we're going to make this little side branch. We just add 3 beads. 1, 2, 3. Push this one, move that last one over just like you did here. Go through these 2 beads. I don't tighten it up too much yet because I want to get in there. And then you're going to go up 3. And you're just at the end of your core branch. If you had contrasting colors, you would see it. And so you stop there 3, so that's the 9 beads that you added and the other 3 beads. So each side branch takes up 12 beads for this pattern. You can adjust the pattern however you like, but the technique is needed. You need to have that stopper bead. And if you want it to fork off, you need to split off in the middle of all that. So basically what you end up there is something of a triangle as you pull it tight. And I just hold on to that last bead there. I'm pulling a good amount tight because that would have loosened up as well. And so you see that last bead there. So I'm pulling that tight again, and now I'm just going to do the same thing again and add 9 more beads. I almost always double check my counting, partly because I enjoy counting. So there's 9. You're going to move that last bead out of the way that you just added. And again, you're going back through 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that you have those last 3 there that you'll go through at the end of making this side branch. Pull that through. Right now you can lay it flat, and it helps to lay it flat to make it, but as you get more side branches added, you might need to hold this in your hand. Now I'm going to add 3 more beads for that side branch. 1, 2, 3. And again, move that last one out of the way. Pick up these 2. And you're going to go back into that first part of the side branch that you made, this second side branch that you've made. And if you can get through, see, sometimes I pull it a little too taut. So, get through that first one, those 3. And now what you're going to do is go up 3 into your core. So now you have 2 little end branches added. I'm going to lay it flat to pull it taut. Okay. Now all of that is pulled taut, and these are the 2 little end branches, and you can move them around however you like once it's done and hanging and whatnot. But these are your first 2 side branches, which are at the end in this case. And you just end up repeating that same pattern. You add 9, move one, the last one you added over and out of the way, go back through 5, go off to the side, add 3 more beads, move that last one out of the way that you just added, go through the 2, back into the rest of this stem, and then into the core for 3. And you're just going to keep adding 1 every 3 core beads up. Just like this. So there's the 2 end ones. And then I went up, or she went up 3, my mom. Added 9. Skipped the last one, back through 5. Added 3. Skipped that last one, back through 2, through 3 on the rest of that branch, side branch you added. And then back up 3 and added more. So this is repeated. In total, you will have 11 branches. But once you get to that last branch that you've added, this 11th one, how you add it back into the core is going to be a little bit different. So let's move on to that step. So this is all 10 branches added. There's that anchor bead. So everything's in place. We're just going to add that last branch, the 11th branch. So I'll show you one more time how to do this. Add 9 beads.
3, 6, 9. Move that out of the way. Oops.
The last one out of the way. Up, back, through 5.
2, 3, 5.
Add 3. 1, 2, 3. Move that last one that you just added out of the way. Go through these 2 on your side branch. I'm going to pick it up so you can see a little bit better. Then you're going to go through the last 3 that are on that side branch that you've added.
Sorry, I was pulling that off there. So I'm just pulling that through. It's all the way through there.
And now when we come up through the core stem, we're going to go all the way to the top except for that anchor bead. So through all of those, everything except that anchor bead. Okay, so all of those threads are through, and you can take off this anchor bead now just by sliding it off. And there you are done adding all the beads that you're going to add, unless you later add flowers. And we're going to make this loop part, which consists of 6 seed beads. So in order to make that, just like you skip the 1 there, in this case you're going to skip 6. So there's 3 and there's 6. That's out of the way. You always want to pull both threads now and keep this part nice and taut as you go through, because all of this will need to be there. There's few chances left to pull this taut as you progress at this stage. So now I'm entering back into that core. I'm going to try and go down the core. Oops. Sometimes it can slide out. I'd like to go down into the core. Perhaps still about 12 in or so. At least underneath a few branches have passed, a few side branches. Okay, so before I pull that through, I'm going to move the thread part over and just pull these tail ends taut again, just because it does want to slide through, and soon it won't want to, not as much anyways. So now I'm pulling that through. This tail end isn't part of it, so that will want to do its own thing, and you'll just adjust it as it goes. All right. So now as I pull that through, I like to just sort of lightly tug until I have all the threads where I want them. Lightly tug at both ends. Okay, now you're going to ignore that tail end for a little bit. Have your thread loose here. Oh, it looks like I didn't go through that one, which I meant to go through. So I'm just going to do that now, just because I want it to be at the base of the side branch, not in the middle of the stem. You can be in the middle of the stem, but being at the base of the side branch, it's going to hide what we do next a little bit better. So now, where you came out, where that thread has come out, where it's something of a trifecta of beads there, so there's 3, I want you to have the side branch up and the upper part of your earring up where the loop is, and then this is the bottom part. And so you're going to wrap around the core branch twice, once there, and one more time. So that's twice. Hold your thread in place so that it doesn't go anywhere else. Grab your needle and go back up your core stem. And that's creating something of a knot, something of a tension to prevent it from loosening up again. So I'm just going to, before I pull that through, I'm going to pull that end thread and where it's wrapped taut. I'm up through the core about, what is that, six beads. Careful not to tangle your threads. Sorry if I pulled that off camera. So I've pulled that taut. And now that won't really want to loosen up anymore. That's kind of your last chance to pull it taut. And now I'm going to go into the side branch. All the way to the end. And that should be in there nice and good, so you don't really have to worry about anything, and you can just snip that thread right there at the end. Now all we have to do is tag in this tail thread. If I was adding flowers, I would have had all this thread to add flowers, which I will be adding flowers, just not yet, because I wanted to show this method first. So now with this tail end piece, or the anchor thread that you had, I always like to use my saliva to help me to get the threads to stay together when I'm threading a needle. So you just thread that end piece on your beading needle. And you're not going to do any wrapping, but you are going to put it in there to the side branch in a good spot. So we're just at the base there of our loop, and we're not going to go around the loop anymore. We're just going to go right into the core stem, which is right here. I'm going to go into the core stem until the third branch from the top. Sometimes it can be a little difficult. You might want to do it in stages, which I'm going to do right now. I'm pulling that taut. I still need to go through 2 more before I can get to that side branch. That's probably because that's where the wrap was. So I'm probably going through some thread there as opposed to beside it, which is fine because this anchors it in even better. Make sure when you're pulling these taut that you don't catch anything, and if you do, if you don't do it too fast, you'll notice it and be able to take it out. And now I'm going to go into this side branch and out. To the very end. That last bead might be blocking you. You might have to move it over a little because it's perpendicular. Moving my threads out of the way. Oh, look, my thread almost came off. I have to be careful there. All right, threads are mostly out of the way. Sometimes it might be a little difficult to pull through. Like I said, there was that wrap there, so it's probably going through thread. So I'm just using my tweezers, or sorry, my pliers to pull that through. If it's not going to go through at all, then you might end up breaking your needle doing that. So I like to save it for if I really think it should be able to go through, which I was pretty sure in that case. Okay, so now I'm just pulling that taut And I'm going to snip that thread. I didn't put it through the very last one. There's no real need. It would just be loose anyway. Make sure you don't snip that bead off. So that's the earring, and now we just need to add the hardware. So we just open up, usually it's closed when you get it. We just open that up either, with, like I said, with our nails, or you can just twist it up with your pliers. So now it's open. You'll notice the bead at the end will want to go in there if you have that type. You need to get that out of the way. So I put it behind my nail usually. If you don't have nails, that might end up being difficult. And you just hook it on there. You could take your pliers or your fingernails and move it over a little. You might be able to get the whole thing. You know what? It's not going great with that because I can't see very well because it's under the camera. So I'm just going to use my fingernail. Put it back in place so that it's closed. And then I'm going to close it a little bit more with these pliers. And there we are. Our seed branch earrings in copper with copper hardware. And I will be adding flowers to this one. If your earrings are already complete, like these ones, and you decide to add flowers afterwards, as I did in this case, this is the earring that I was trying to work out how to add flowers to. And so I made the earring first and then tried out a flower pattern, which I'm rather happy with. And you already saw a little bit of demonstration on how to add it while adding the branches. But if you've decided to add it afterwards, all you really need to do is just thread your beading needle with some more thread. It doesn't have to be super long. You may have to do it twice. And since this can get a little bit tangled and difficult, that might always be the best idea. Now you don't need to tie a knot. All you need to do is go in far enough away from your branch, your side branch that you're adding the flowers to. So I'm just going to come in on the core stem, the core branch here, and go in 3, go in 3 more, so 6. I'm going to go all the way out to this end of this branch here, just like before when you did it while doing the branches. And keep in mind, I haven't added a knot, so you're going to want to make sure you don't pull it all the way through. You're going to leave a little bit so that you know how much is, you can see it, and you know it, you haven't pulled it too tight through. Later on, you're going to snip that. But the way you add flowers, kind of knots it itself. It makes it very secure, so should be fine. So you came out all the way to the end of the branch. You want to make sure you go through that last one as well that's lying perpendicular to the beads beside it. So you're coming out that last one. Whoops. Remember, keep in mind not to pull that too hard. And again, you're just going to pick up one bead, go back in the way you just came. Oops. Pick up another bead, go back in the way you just came again, off to the side, not through that petal yet. These are the petals that you're adding. 6 little petals. Okay, now you're going to go through it And make sure you enter from one side going out the other, and that you don't twist your thread when you're doing it. Okay, so you've come out that side. You're going to hold your place. Grab 2 beads now. And go in the other side, making sure that you haven't twisted it. So usually it will, the hole will be on this side, and you'll just have to make it go back into its position again, perpendicular. It's what happens when you pull tight. So you have those 2 beads added. You could pull a little bit tight here, but it's not really necessary yet. Add 2 more beads and go back in that other petal that you started with. And you have to be careful always it can get caught, even more now as you added the flowers. The threads will get caught. So you always have to be gentle, keeping an eye on where your thread is. Okay, now you're going to pull it a little bit taut, just to get it into place. And you're going to go over top and through this center bead here, which is the end of your side branch. Through that, but you're going to go underneath the flower when you exit. So I'm entering from the top. Oops. Going through the seed bead, and I'm entering or exiting underneath the flower. And you'll see why in a second, or if you remember from before as well. Okay, be careful when you're pulling your threads, because you're going to get caught. Okay, now you can pull it pretty taut. I put my thumb over the top of the flower just to keep all the beads in place. Nice circle. So now you go underneath. You go back into your stem of your side branch here. And now you're going to go out the other tiny side branch, or the side branch. Oops, it can be a little difficult because the beads want to wiggle around. This isn't all lined up like it is on a loom. Ooh. Okay, so it came out through there. And I'm going to try and get it through these 2, at least. Sometimes you can't get through the last one until the end, which is fine. I a lot of times don't even try. And just do it when I'm adding the flower. So pulling that. Now this is where you're going to set the strength of this flower, set its tension. Make sure that isn't looped around. It's going in nicely. And then as I pull that flower should be in place. There we go. Sometimes you have to move the bead a little. And then just come up through this last bead again. On the side, add 1 bead, go back in the way you came. Oops. Add 1 bead, go back in the way you came again, out to the side there. Oops. Make sure that it's not tangled, as always. It's good to keep your threads on top of everything, but I'm trying to make sure everyone can see here. Okay, so I'm going to go through that bead from right to left. Pick up 2 beads. Go back in this side. Remember, it wants to turn. You have to make it turn back. Pull that, but not too tight, just enough. There's 2/3 of your flower. Add 2 more beads and go back in that first petal. Pull it a little taut. And just like before, you're going to go back into that center of your flower, which is the end of your side branch, and go from the top and then go underneath. Pull it through. And then go back into your branch, your side branch stems. It can be a little difficult, especially if you've pulled it taut several times. Alright, so I'm going back through those 2. Whew. And now I'm going to go back into the core branch. Those 3. Pull that taut. Those flowers are in place. And then you just go into another branch and continue on until you're done. And that's how you add it after the fact. And when you're done, you can just trim that. Because these are pretty much locked in, all of these flowers, because you go back and forth and through the stems and whatnot, you really don't need to knot it. You just need it to be anchored down just a little bit further down from where you start, which I think it was about 15 beads for me in total. And now I'm going to trim that. Oops. When you're trimming, always make sure you're not cutting through your earring, because then all that work is for none. Although you could reattach it, probably. And you just go on like that until it's done. After you have your last flower added, and you've gone through the last bead at the end there from up top underneath, now you're going to go back into your side branch stem there, and you're going to go back up your core branch. Yeah, I'm probably going to go back up about 6. 1, 2, 3, oops, 4, 5, 6. Well, it looks like I want it to go through more than that. Pull that through. A little bit at a time, because it will want to twist. And I've pulled it taut as far as it will go. And that is done. I'm just going to snip that little bit, being careful not to snip my earrings. And there, it's done. The branch earring with little flowers at the end.